And ladies and gentlemen, foreign and domestic, to another great episode, jam-packed tonight of the Two Bucks Sports Podcast. This is your co-host, Buckets, aka Rusty, out in sunny Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I'm here with my ever-present co-host, Uncle Buck, Mr. Drew Gann. Welcome to the podcast tonight.
What's up, Rusty? Well, I'm holding down the fort here in North Mississippi for you.
Yeah.
Unlike the last time we recorded when it was 8 degrees, we have, like Mississippi, if you don't like the weather, wait till tomorrow. It is a blistering 65 degrees out here and just a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Absolutely. And then if you're watching on our YouTube channel, that's Two Bucks Sports Pod on YouTube. You will notice that we have another friendly face that if you follow our social medias, you've probably seen him on there as our field reporter, good buddy of both of ours, Mr. Lauren Massey. Lauren, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Appreciate y'all having me. This is going to be fun. First time podcaster, long time listener.
Here it is.
Yeah. Episode 10. You've listened to 9 episodes.
So. Sweet.
That's it, man.
That's certified as day one.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I feel like I was part of this podcast long before it was even a podcast, right?
Yeah. So take everybody back to the beginning when Rusty moved all the way out to the right coast out there to the Pacific to the
east of the SIP.
Eastern time zone, the worst time zone in the world. I went out to visit him, and on our first day out there, we go to the beach like one does when you're visiting the beach. And we're having ourselves a good time, and I wear my beach shirt, which is an old Colton Wong jersey for the former second baseman for the St. Louis Cardinals. And that was my beach shirt. I got it for free at a Cardinals game, and it's nice because when you get hot, you just unbutton it, you know? And I'm walking down to the water, and this big dude, the biggest dude I've ever seen, and I'm over here with Rusty, who's every bit of 6'4", 6'5". I don't know how tall you are, Rusty, but he just stops me, and I was like, he said, Colton Wong? I said, yes, sir. Colton Wong. He said, well, have a beer with me. I said, yes, sir. And a friendship was born. I took this big fella right back to our tent.
Don't forget, the beer was also the right brand.
Yeah. As true Cardinals fans know, Busch Light is the way to go. So, yeah. And a friendship was born. And this fella even came to North Mississippi. I got him to come all the way to North Mississippi for my wedding. And he was the life of the party there, too.
I mean, I think your job about hit the floor when you found out we were coming.
Well, we got married in the middle of COVID, and so most people didn't come, and it was not any fault of anybody else's, and there were no hard feelings. But when you found out somebody from out of town was coming, it was like, yes, sir. Now I know I can count on Lauren and Stacy.
I mean, all the way to Corinth.
That's it, man. Got to have his first Russell's experience. For our listeners there in North Mississippi, y'all know what that's all about. That's the good life.
I mean, that cannot come. My second experience cannot come soon enough. Let me tell you.
Hey, I am free this weekend.
I mean, listen, Rusty knows the drill. All I want is the secret sauce in the used ketchup bottles. Okay, that's all I want. I don't care. That stuff could be motor oil. It could be It could be motor oil, and I wouldn't care because it's
Rusty's
delicious.
coming down in a month. Y'all just carpool.
All right.
Well, Lauren, we're glad to have you tonight. Lauren was our boots on the ground field reporter for the ReliaQuest Bowl down in Tampa. Lauren is a fan of the Fighting Illini and found himself down in the area for the game, so he checked it out and took some good notes, I'm sure, and we'll get to that here in just a few minutes. But first, I feel like we need to address kind of some somber news. I feel like we've done that a few times on the podcast, but I know all of us were watching and all of our listeners were watching or paying attention, at least on Monday night, and understand kind of the gravity of the situation. Just a quick synopsis: professional football player Damar Hamlin, product of the University of Pittsburgh Panthers program, Dave Narduzzi's program. He was hit in the chest by T. Higgins in just a freak accident. Experienced cardiac arrest, and I won't go into a ton of details out of respect for the family, but which really put a damper and a somber cloud over Monday Night Football and what was promising to be a great game, right? A clash for one of the top seeds in the AFC. And it really put a lot of things in perspective, at least for me. I don't know about y'all, but it was tough to really watch and see. It's something I've never seen playing football my entire life.
Yeah, Buckets. I'm a big NFL guy, and recently I've been a big fantasy guy, and that's kind of my basis around the NFL. And I watch a lot of NFL because of fantasy. And aside from fantasy, I mean, you don't get very many in a 18-week in an 18-week NFL season. In prime time, especially, it doesn't seem like lately you've gotten just a ton of good matchups.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a game I looked at: Bengals versus Bills, two division leaders vying for one seed in their conference. I mean, I couldn't have been more stoked for that game. And to see how it started with a touchdown by Cincinnati quick, and then a long drive down the field by Buffalo ended in a field goal. I mean, you just knew that this game, just buckle up, because this game's going to get rowdy. And I've seen some. I was watching the Kevin Ware injury for Louisville when he broke his leg on the court, and you saw the reaction from the bench, and it was horrifying.
The Alex Smith injury is probably one of the nastiest ones I've ever seen on live TV.
And
he was conscious, right? Like this dude, like got up from the play and then all of a sudden went, did the nesty plunge, right? It was like.
And I've never witnessed, and I've seen all these injuries live, but I've never witnessed the air come out of a stadium. Just the way he did. And I was telling Rusty and Lauren right before we started the podcast, I've always learned to look at the players surrounding the injury. If you want to learn about kind of figure out the severity of it, if they start motioning immediately for carts and medics and everything, it's pretty serious. And you saw that, but then that's the first time I've ever seen somebody not get up. That's what stuck with me, is that it's a contact sport, and you've seen broken legs. You've seen, I saw Dak Prescott and for the Cowboys, and Nick Fitzgerald for the Mississippi State, and Laquan Treadwell when he's playing for Ole Miss. I've seen dislocated ankles, and it's just like devastating. Your season's over. But they always get up, and they're going to be okay.
To me, this is most comparable to, I was watching, I believe it was Thursday Night Football, the Ryan Shazier injury. Very similar situation, but a neck injury. He went down, and as soon as he went down, even the announcers, the air was let out of the stadium. The announcer said, "This is not good." Had about another 20, 30-minute delay. They continued that game because, not making light of his injury, but neck injuries are a part of football.
But again, you compare that injury to the one on Monday night, and there was no ambulance. There was no. I mean, you looked at the people, the ESPN, and I'm sure a lot of people don't like the enhanced camera angles zooming in on players to see them in this raw emotion. But I appreciated it because you really, that was the only way to appreciate the gravity of the situation for me. Like if you just went to commercial, you don't know what's going on. And I don't care to know the details in the moment. I don't care to know anything, but to be able to see the impact it was having on the players really made it hit home.
Yeah.
And with Ryan Shazier and some of these awful injuries, I know back before my time, Ole Miss player was paralyzed from the neck down. His name's Chucky Mullins, and he was paralyzed on impact. He never walked again after that, and he was taken off the field. But to hear almost immediately Joe Buck say, they're doing chest compressions, I was like, oh, this is different. This is like a worst case scenario. And then the NFL on top of that just compounded it by trying to push it back on the field. Like, let's get the game played. It's important, and we all know the game's important. And I think I think that's what Skip Bayless was trying to say, was that we know that this game is important for the NFL.
Yeah.
But pick a better time to say it. The Skip Bayless tweet. I'll read it to you because I know y'all have some thoughts.
Well, I'd like to chime in if y'all don't mind about.
Yeah, go right ahead,
please.
you know, my wife and her infinite common sense wisdom brought up a really good point to kind of put it in context. Do you know how many people in the world go to their jobs every day and have an opportunity not to come home?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we all know the NFL has done a piss poor job, pardon my French, of managing, mental health, CTE, concussions, right? People have to die. They have to have their brains looked at. You got to have the Junior Seau's of the world, the Jim McMahons to make any kind of headway. And if it wasn't for the fact that this was the only game on prime time, a big game,
right,
tons of people watching, would the reaction by the league have been in support of the players and definitely driven by the players and the coaches?
Yeah.
Roger Goodell's track record on those matters, not good.
Yeah.
Right.
And I put a lot of blame on that heartless, gutless, money grubbing SOB. I just don't, he wants to be a man of the people. He won't take an audience with Portnoy. Roger Goodell there's three little letters that come up when I think of Roger Goodell, KMA.
Well,
right?
Two things to that. Roger Goodell is a man of the people, but the only people that he's for is for the owners.
The owners.
And that's the 32 folks that like him,
Franklin and, the pictures of the people on the dollar bills.
Right. And I thought about that, and I wondered to myself, what does this injury look like if it happens at 12 o'clock noon on a Sunday?
In the middle of all the other games, man.
Yeah.
Right. Because I believe it's a story. I mean, it's obviously a story.
Right.
But nobody's being pulled off the field across the NFL. It is able to be kind of talked about alongside the other games. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, we can talk about this, but we also, the Ravens and Steelers are also playing. So we get to talk about that.
Do you think they break into the telecast across the red zone or across the NFL ticket if that happens at noon?
I think they do, but that's all they do. I think if it's like, and especially because like you said, it's Monday night. Drew, you've already mentioned this. It's two top tier teams, but just say it's like the Texans and the Raiders are playing at 12 o'clock kick. They're gonna mention that it happened. They're gonna shuffle it to the side, and I guarantee you that game resumed as soon as he was taken off the field. But the fact that
I don't
Monday night,
I don't think it resumes.
Pressure, I do, because I think the pressure from the spotlight on the single Monday night game is the only reason. I mean, again, we saw the example. The NFL wanted to continue the game, but the players were like, and the coaches were like, "We're not doing this."
And I think it is absolutely. I think it's absolutely postponed for the same reasons, because the players would not do it. But what would happen is CBS would option to another game.
Yeah.
If the Bills and Bengals are playing at 12 o'clock noon and that happens, then they're just going to go to another 12 o'clock game as soon as the coverage stops. And then that's the news cycle. It advances. They start talking about something else.
Yep.
So it's really shameful. And I don't know how you recover from it from the NFL, because what you've got to think about outside of just the business of the NFL is all the parents that are watching it at home with the kids who are old enough to start playing football or are playing football, and they look at their husbands or they look at their wives, they look at their kids like, I know it's a shot in the dark. This was a freak of nature. It's like a freak accident, but I'm not going to subject you to freak accidents that could kill you. That's what
the next day the kids are all playing soccer and lacrosse, right?
Yeah.
Right. And that's a conversation that we can really get into later, because there's been some studies when it comes to youth participation in football declining versus youth participation in soccer that's going through the roof. You've got club level soccer in every city. I mean, I know even Corinth and Ripley have club teams that play soccer, and you see the numbers diminish in tackle football. Maybe not as much here in the South where football is still king, but
y'all can play
across the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we've kind of covered a lot of it, but I agree. It's gonna make some people second guess. But I tell you, good on Shannon Sharp. I don't know if y'all saw the clip this morning, but he just shut down Skip.
He's a better man than me. Let me tell you.
Yeah, because he tried.
And I'm not a fan of Shannon Sharp, but I'm 100% behind this dude.
Oh, I am a fan of Shannon Sharp because he is the foil to Skip Bayless, who's
well
just
in that context.
In that context, you have to pick a side.
In a general context, man, no.
Yeah, but in that context, you're forced to pick a side. So you got to pick. Yeah,
you take him off that show and nobody watches, right? Like nobody's watching Skip Bayless and somebody else. Like if he left and went to First Take with Stephen A. Smith, that show's done. And I think that's where we're heading. And shame on ESPN for having them trying to air that out on national TV. Like you cut Skip's mic, you let Uncle Shay has his say, like whatever, Fox Sports, whatever. You let them have their say, you let them have their say off the air. But like doing that on air, like what a terrible, terrible call.
Well, you've got to know though, if you employ Skip Bayless, you know why you employ Skip Bayless, and it is not because you think he's credible, but it's because he lights the fire that stirs it all. He explodes the powder keg, and that's why you're hiring him, and that's why you tell him, don't say a word about this until we're on the air.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if I'm Roger Goodell, and I am more self-aware than the three of us or anyone else in America may think of him in a certain light, if he's aware of his perception in the public, which I would hope that he is, I think he's too arrogant to actually believe it. But if he is, now is the time for him to make save a little face, give a ton of grace. No, and I'm not trying to rhyme there, but to really, make some advances on the NFL perception. And to your point, Rusty and Drew, about participation, this is the time where Roger needs to stand up, speak up, and praise publicly and on a national, like a Skip and Shannon show or First Take or Pardon My Take. And he needs to come out and say, great job, Coach McDermott. Great job, Coach Taylor. Right. They did the right thing. We are for the players, right? This is the time, because he's never been for the players. He's always advocated for the owners, like you said, and for the dollar and for the revenue and for the news and for the likes and the social media views and all of that. And he could really do himself and the league a huge service if he were to just say, this is everybody who is involved, the coaches and the players made the right call. We support them. Yeah. And then, if he really wanted to like turn it up a notch, he could say, I'm taking 5% of my salary this year and donating it to the players' toy drive that he's got going on.
Right.
So something like that, right? I mean, he could spin it however he wanted to, but he could really do some good things. And I don't have the faith that he will. And that's sad, right? That's the sad state of why it's an encapsulation of why participation is declining.
Yeah.
I
agree.
Go ahead, Rusty.
I was going to say, I agree, Lauren. And, at the end of the day, like, we can belabor how terrible they are, but at the end of the day, it's all about DeMar Hamlin right now. Our thoughts and prayers with him and his family. His uncle gave some really good news today. Apparently they were able to reduce him to 50% oxygen. So he's showing signs of improvement. And so I'm just grateful that we have that to talk about, that we are seeing signs. He's got a long road to hoe ahead of him. Yeah. But
I mean, I'd like to see him get that intubation tube removed in the next 24 to 48. That, to me, knowing that they intubated him, right, to try to stabilize him and get his heart beating and the electrical pulses, regulated. If they can remove that breathing tube and remove it and get him breathing on his own, that is like,
we're heading in the right direction.
The next major hurdle.
Yeah.
It's and anytime you have tragedy like this, it's always I always find it refreshing to see the outpouring of love by everybody else.
Yeah.
And what's going on with that toy drive? I don't know the most recent number, but I believe today I saw 5 million.
Yeah, it's over 5
well,
million.
it's over 6 because Brady made a very substantial donation.
That's awesome.
Well, I saw on social media today going around, and it's just a kind of a funny story, but it was about that. And somebody screenshot the GoFundMe account, and you could see the donators to it, and Chris Jericho was one of them. You know, famous WWE
Really?
wrestler Chris
That's
Jericho,
awesome.
and he donated twice. He donated $3,000, but he misspelled his name, and so the next post is Chris Jericho with his name spelled correctly with another $3,000.
Good on the walls of Jericho, man.
Yeah,
Let's go.
yeah. Good on the walls of Jericho.
But yeah, man, for real, like all of our thoughts and prayers with Damar Hamlin and his family. We're thinking about him, praying for a full recovery, and best wishes to them.
Absolutely.
Let's and I'd like to say something else. First of all, we looked it up to verify. There is one other player in NFL history who died on the field. The person that was involved, his widow is still alive.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I'd like to say is, on a more personal level, because of my wife and her love for her alma mater, the Clemson Tigers, sincere, heartfelt positivity to T. Higgins.
Absolutely.
That dude did nothing wrong.
Nope.
He has no culpability. I'm sure he is emotionally feeling like he did something wrong. And I know there are detractors out there on the interwebs and social media circles that are bashing him.
Yeah.
And they can all go right straight to hell with Nick Saban. And they can burn a fiery hell alongside Urban Meyer.
I cannot stand that his name, like, I even shudder when it says when it's all part of context, and it's written that way. But when people say,
"Are you high? You didn't hit him."
Even when people say, "Well, he was injured after tackling T. Higgins," I'm like, even that's like, okay, let's just he tackled somebody because whether we all know like T. Higgins didn't do anything, or responsible people know that T. Higgins didn't do anything wrong, and he certainly, even if he was trying to hit him to gain the extra yard, no one in their right mind could have ever suspected.
Man, that's like saying Randy Johnson tried to hit that bird when he killed that bird with a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. Randomly, the bird just flew in the path of his fastball.
Right?
Hell no. No.
That's it, man.
God, the irresponsibility of the general public to ever place blame at the feet of T. Higgins. Is
Don't ever
infuriating.
Don't ever consider Twitter personalities to be a fair judgment on humanity as a whole, because there's
a scary place.
Some bad folks on there.
Yeah, scary place. But yeah, real quick, again, just thoughts and prayers with Damar Hamlin and T. Higgins as he's dealing with that. I do want to take just a quick second, get your initial gut reaction on what is a quick. We're going to stay in the NFL briefly before we do get into the ReliaQuest Bowl, but the Washington Commanders. First of all, terrible nickname. Absolute dumpster fire of an organization. But have y'all seen their new mascot?
No.
Oh yeah, what is it?
His name is Tutty. Drew, I want you to do a quick Google search on your phone. Grab something. Hold on. I want to get when I saw this thing the other day.
Did they ask Pat McAfee for permission to use the word Tutty?
I don't know. First of all, second of all, what are they like? First of all, you picked Commanders. You had the Red Hogs and so many other great names.
Oh my God, is that a pig?
I think it's a pig.
I mean, I would have rather gone out there as George Washington.
Just go back to the Redskins.
Yeah.
I mean,
he looks like the Corky's. If you're from Memphis in the Mid-South, you know Corky's barbecue. That is the Corky's pig.
Listen, hold on a second. I love this mascot because I feel represented for once. You see the belly on that sucker? I mean, all these people want to go out there with mascots that are all thin and trim and sexy, and I feel represented by Porky the Pig here, being the mascot. I mean, I'm watching the video.
Take John Daly and shave him down. Is that what they did? I didn't know John Daly was a Commanders fan.
Yeah, I'm watching this video that Outkick put out. That just happened to be the video that popped up when I searched it on Twitter. And he's trotting out on the field for his introduction, and I can tell that he's winded, and that makes me feel good.
Anyway, I just wanted to get y'all's response on Tutty, the new Washington Commanders mascot.
Commanders mascot.
Go Commanders. Are they gonna start calling the Hogs? Like, are they gonna have like
oh, that'll be the end.
Ties?
Hang on. Y'all are too young for this, but back in the 80s,
oh yeah,
the offensive line that John Riggins ran behind and Joe Theismann played quarterback behind, they were the Hogs.
Right. And they would wear pig noses in the stands. I get the reference, but they could have done a much better job with the representation.
I disagree. If you're going to have a hog as a mascot, you can't have a thin one. Nobody wants a thin hog.
Yeah, I guess the Razorback in Arkansas. Yeah.
So no, you're absolutely dead wrong.
You don't trust.
He's ugly, but
you don't trust a skinny cook, and you don't trust a thin hog.
That's it, man. That's the
Mississippi skinny
logic
hog does not get eaten.
That's it.
It's good for the hog, but bad for humanity.
Yeah. Well, all right, Lauren. You were our field reporter. You were there on the ground at the ReliaQuest Bowl, man. Give us the feel on the ground. Tell us about what it was like. Talk to us about it.
Well, that picture I sent you, Rusty, that was from Beach Day, Clearwater Beach Day, hosted, put on by the city of Clearwater. The teams were invited down to the beach. It was right up the road from where we were staying, so we could walk there. Bands played, and the cheerleaders and dancers all danced. Mississippi State's band was first, and the Illinois band, and it was cool to see the band nerds geek out and cheer for each other and like high five each other as they walked by and get a little love. And it was a good crowd out on the beach. And then, they introduced the coaches spoke, the players came out, and then there was like some little tug of war between cheerleaders. They had all men, all women, and then a co-ed thing, which ended up being in favor of. So it was a best out of three tug of war. Mississippi State won that. They won the women's and they won the co-ed. The men's was dominated by the Illini, of course.
You can't tell me that y'all didn't even win that.
No, Mississippi State won that one. I said there was best out of three. It was all women, it was all men, and it was a co-ed.
I'm just saying I was pulling for you in the game. You lost that. And now you're telling me that they had a cheerleader tug of war and you lost that too?
I mean, we won the men's one, which is all that matters.
The men's cheerleaders. That's the one I'm supposed to be pulling for?
Okay. Well, anyway, the players all went out to the beach, and after all this was over, and that was cool because, like, we're out there. I'm looking for, like, Coach Bielema, and I'm looking for Josh Whitman, the AD.
Speaking of Hogs.
Listen, you need to keep your little mouth shut about your negative opinion of Brett Bielema right now, okay?
Hey, I was born.
Your strange, odd hatred for this man that was – he didn't have a 500 record at Arkansas just because they beat y'all one time. I mean, seriously, dude.
No, it was once, unfortunately.
Okay, well, all right, whatever. Anyway, so like the players are out there, which is cool. I got a couple snaps with some of the dudes. There was one guy that the Mississippi State guys. There were some big boys, big, large men. But then we kind of just took off from there, and then we moved our hotel inland closer to the stadium, and game day rolled around. We found out that our hotel had a nice little shuttle, so we could shuttle to and from the game, and that's where we kind of started having interactions with Mississippi State. More one-on-one interaction with Mississippi State fans was like on the shuttles, and some very nice folks. The Hoppers from Starkville said that if we're ever in Starkville, they would like us to look them up. She said, Hopper like Dennis, like the bunny, Hopper. We live in Starkville. Look us up. And I was like, yes, ma'am, I will.
Where do you look people up? There's not a phone book anymore.
Yeah.
The interwebs, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. We going to go to the post office and look them up on the most wanted or what?
That's it.
Can you 411 people anymore?
Right. We went to the game. Got there, tried to, kind of roamed around. It was shocking to see as much orange as we did. We probably pulled in the stadium about got there about 9:30. Probably went in about 11. starting to fill up, a lot of cowbells, but we were sitting kind of, if you notice when Mississippi State ran in and ran out the stadium, that's the corner we were in, but in the end zone. So we were directly in the sun. And it was the first, they'd had rain for like 36 hours and overcast for about 2 days prior to that. So it was foggy that was the first really warm Florida day. And so it was going to be in the low 80s, and it was warm. Luckily, we had some cloud cover, but I definitely felt like to our right in the Illinois section and in the opposite end zone, way more orange than maroon. Now, the cowbells made it seem like there was more populace, and as I was texting with my buddies back home, he was saying, gosh, this cowbell sound loud on TV, and I'm like, well, there's a ton more orange. And the upper decks, there were hardly anything in the upper decks, especially behind y'all's bench, Rusty. But I will say this, and I don't know what the announcers. I only heard about it kind of anecdotally, but it sounded like much was made that the team was playing for Coach Leach. We had a moment of silence for him. The first penalty of the game, which was declined, was for him. The male and female Bulldog mascots were wearing pirate outfits. There were tons of shirts that said "Swing Your Sword." Lots of Coach Leach people were wearing pirate outfits and pirate flags and all this stuff, right? And I guess that I understand that the announcers made all this deal about playing for Coach Leach, and I'll be honest, it kind of turned me off. I was sad about Coach Leach too, Rusty. We talked about it. What a guy. Unique. Very, very forward-thinking in his offensive tactics, creative. I didn't realize the scope of his coaching tree, but to make the game from the announcer standpoint again about the players playing, man, I'll be honest, I don't think the players were focusing. They just wanted to win.
Right.
Their motivation wasn't win it for Coach Leach. It was, we just want a bowl victory.
Yeah. I think I agree. And then I think at the end of the game, like the gravity of everything hit, because there were some pretty emotional shots of Will Rogers and some of the other players and coaches. Like you could tell like the emotion of the moment hit them. I would agree that they were out there trying to win a football game. And then Mike Leach was probably the thought before the game and then after the game. And then like the gravity of doing it, like hit.
You've got to be careful with announcers too, because announcers typically find the least common denominator and talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
I know I was mad during the Ole Miss Arkansas game when the whole time they were talking about Auburn and Lane Kiffin. That's the topic, and they're going to hammer it. These people aren't like.
Yeah, they're not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
They don't do just a whole lot of research.
And the product on the field, Lauren, you and I talked about this. It was like
I've kind of skirted that, haven't I, Rusty?
It was like
and I was going to ask you, Lauren. You said that Mike Leach didn't seem to play a part. His passing didn't seem to play a part in the game. But I was about the end of that fourth quarter, I started to wonder if Illinois was just going to let them win it just for Mike Leach. Just like, okay, so honestly, nothing's happened this whole game, and y'all going to let them drive the whole length of the field with no time left? And I'm like, is this too much respect being paid to Mississippi State right now? Have you no pride?
I felt like we lost a lot of pride towards the end of the game, and we gave up. It also showed our youth and inexperience in our QD and our depth. We're missing the Brown brothers. Chase Brown, the nation's leading rusher, opted out. His brother Sidney Brown is second team All Big Ten. Safety, All-American cornerback Devin Witherspoon. Another guy in our secondary, I can't think of his name, hurt, couldn't play. And then we had Quan Martin, just declare, but he played. And then, one of our better receivers this year, Brian Hightower, who's a transfer from Miami, he was hurt and couldn't play. And then he decided to enter the transfer portal post game. So we honestly were missing some pieces. That's irrelevant in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
What really showed was we've had some coach turnover, as have y'all, obviously. With Coach Leach, the biggest piece, but we lost our defensive coordinator, who was a finalist for the Burrells Award. He became the head coach at Purdue, Ryan Walters, up and comer, and then he took with him our linebackers coach, Kevin Kane, and he took with him our running back coach, Corey Patterson, who was a stud recruiter, recruited the hell out of St. Louis. He was an assistant coach at Trinity Catholic in St. Louis, which produced for us number one, Isaiah Williams, who was our primary receiver all game and our primary kickoff and punt return person you may have seen. He's a quick little dude, was a quarterback in high school, converted wide receiver. So we had some coaching turnover, and you could tell. There was just, I think our defense was playing its guts out, but was outmanned.
Both teams looked a little disjointed the whole time.
I mean, because we both had new coaches. This was Steve Spurrier Jr.'s first time calling a game.
And last
you
time
can
in
tell.
Mississippi State.
Yeah, you can tell. So I agree, very disjointed. But at the end of the day, it was a bowl game, and football got played. So
and I think Bert, and I'm going to call him Bert because that's what I like to refer to him as, Mr. Brett Bielema.
Yep, that's what everybody calls him.
He looks like a big old Bert. He looks like he should be Craig Stadler's illegitimate child. Like Craig Stadler and Brigitte Nielsen had sex, and that's what came out of it.
Man, I'm 0 for 2 on that one.
Well, you know who Brigitte Nielsen is. She was the one that was getting busy with Flavor Flav.
Oh yeah.
Flavor Flav. She's an Amazon woman.
Okay.
And Craig Stadler is a heavy set golfer from the 80s. You can Google him. Anyhow, Bert, first bowl game since he's been back in the college ranks. First time, Barry Lunny Jr., offensive coordinator, who was at UTSA last year. It just showed that our quarterback, Tommy DeVito, was good, not great, gutsy, not making a lot of good decisions about throwing the ball away when he was under duress. Our offensive line was not holding up. Our trench play, both on the offensive line, defensive line for the Illini, strengths for us all year. Not having a good running game to help give Tommy DeVito some time in the pocket, and Mississippi State's depth on the defensive line. They're rotating players. They were stronger. They appeared stronger. They were faster. And then our pass rush not getting home at all on Will Rogers. And after I'd seen Will Rogers all year look like he was running and scrambling, I mean, I never saw that man's britches clean a single time this year. Like, he was on the ground a lot, right? And so he didn't get on. I mean, that dude had all day. All day. Yeah. And it was frustrating and there weren't, Ryan Walters, I feel like, was much better at in-game adjustments than maybe our new defensive coordinator, who was promoted from defensive backs coach, Aaron Henry, who's going to be a good defensive coordinator, but he's got some on-the-job training still to come into. But I think there were some missing pieces for us. We were, like you said, Rusty, both teams were out of sorts, out of practice, out of rhythm. A couple things about the Illini. We lost 4 of our last 5 to end the season. We lost all 5 of our games by 1 score or less.
Yeah.
And we gave up the fewest points per game in FBS to be 8-5. Some seriously odd statistics to make you scratch your head and wonder what the hell was going on. But all credit to Mississippi State. Wasn't happy about that last play. I know they were trying to run a Nashville miracle play and get that kickoff in the end zone. But
yeah, man. Again, sloppy football for a bowl game, as you'd expect, particularly with all the turnover. But man, we certainly appreciate you being there, taking more for the team, going down there for us, and watching the game, being on the ground, reporting back tonight, Lauren. it's a pleasure to have you on for sure, man. And looking forward to having you on some more in the future to talk, whatever we decide, whether that's baseball or we talk about football. Like this won't be the last time we have
you. You mean this baseball team right here? This one?
I queued it up for you. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Hey, Lauren, I never asked him how he felt about Wilson Contreras now being a catcher for the Cardinals.
Yeah.
The heir apparent, the hand-chosen heir apparent for
that dude basically like invited himself to our team, and we were like, "Oh, you want to come play? Yeah, come on."
Yeah,
we got conveniently a space just opened up over here for you. The GOAT just left the building, so.
Right. Well, good to see you, Lauren.
Hey, man, thanks for having me, y'all. I appreciate you very much. I'm sorry if I was a little long-winded, but yes.
Hey, not at all.
Frustrating loss for my Illini. I'm hoping we have a little bit better showing next year. I told every single Mississippi State fan that I met that Stacey and I would be rooting for Mississippi State if it wasn't the fact they were playing the Illini. I will say this, Rusty, 2 encounters I had with Mississippi State fans. One set of fans we rode with on the shuttle to and from. It was a married couple in our age range, all 3 of us, so mid-30s, something like that. Mm-hmm. Wife was pregnant, Ole Miss fan. Husband, Mississippi State alum. They had been to Chicago earlier this year, saw a Bears and Cubs game in the same day, saw how pathetic our Bears were. And they couldn't have been nicer. Super nice people. That's the fellow that he wanted to know all. He took a screenshot on my phone of the Twitter feed for the 2 Bucks podcast. So
that's dope.
Hopefully he signed up and is listening. He wanted to know where y'all were on Apple. I was like, I don't think so.
We're working on it.
Working on
that. The second encounter, towards the end of the game, nobody in the bleachers behind us in that end zone. All of a sudden, we got this 2 fellas and 2 young boys, probably early teens, and they have no cowbells, but they're banging on the empty seats, and they're not doing it like at a time that you think, like during Mississippi State's offensive plays, they're back. I'm like, don't you know that's a time to be quiet? Whatever. Dude behind me, the dad of one or both of these boys, I mean, a yuck mouth. There's about to be a bunch of pissed off Illinois fans right here. They're going to fuck around and find out and blah, blah, blah. And so this was going on for literally, and I'm not exaggerating, 20 to 30 minutes, to the point where I stood up. He's at least 4 rows behind me. I said, sir, has someone been talking shit to you all again? Well, why? Are you offended? No. I said, did one of my people, the Illini fan, talk shit to you and get you this? No, I'm just having fun. Why are you offended? I said, no, you answered my question. Thank you. I just wanted to know. And he said, well, answer mine. I said, no, you didn't offend me. I just want to make sure you're not upset because someone got you there from people on my side of the. No, we're just having fun. I said, okay, go ahead, have fun. You're good. We shook hands, parted company. I saw him on the way out. I shook hands and said, Happy New Year. He left after I talked to him because he thought like he was just so nasty. And I know every fan base has that. And I hadn't witnessed a single one of them up until that point in all my time in Florida, 8 days, at any hotel, on the beach, just around town, man, seeing people.
Yeah.
And that was the first one. I was like, damn it.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to bring it up because I knew
I hear you.
That would give your boy Uncle Drew would get some, typical Mississippi State asshole.
I mean, like you said, man, there's those in every fans. I hate that you ran into our unfortunate example of that, but appreciate you setting him straight there, man. And again,
listen, I didn't try to start nothing because he was just like, they're gonna fuck around and find out. And I was like, who?
Yeah,
it's a 10-10 game, and y'all are about to drive down and beat us on a field goal.
Yeah,
who? What?
Yeah.
Where is this coming from? But
yeah.
And then I heard the SEC shit too, and that really, I've experienced that. Bama Clemson games. That shit. I'm sorry. There's no Big Ten chant. First of all, second of all, I'm not one of these people who's pro conference, because the two best teams in my conference, or the conference that my school represents, I can't fucking stand them.
Nobody likes that.
No, and I can't stand Michigan more than Ohio State. So that SEC chant when shit's going right for SEC teams, that makes me want to get real stabby. And
as a fan of an SEC team, I hate the SEC chant as well. I don't cheer for the SEC. I cheer for Ole Miss.
That makes me feel better. I appreciate you, man.
Anything good that happens to the SEC does not help Ole Miss. So I root for them all to lose.
I give a damn about revenue sharing and all that and whatever. And that SEC chant, I mean.
No, I hear you. I get where that could be obnoxious for sure, man.
I digress. I had to bring those two things up as topics that aren't on your list. But
sure.
Hey, man, thank y'all very much. I know I'm taking a bunch of your time, but Drew, give your lovely wife our best, please. Your kids, you know.
I will. We love you, dude.
All right,
love you, dude. Thanks for being here. We'll see you soon.
Russ, always a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah,
we'll be seeing you real soon.
Yeah, buddy. See you soon, Lauren.
Right,
thanks.
See you.
For sure. All right. Well, other bowl games of interest. We can kind of highlight quickly some of the New Year's Six, and then I really want to kind of dive into the championship game, the playoff games. Drew, I know, did you get a chance to watch the Alabama K-State or the Tulane USC games?
I did. I was invested in that Cotton Bowl and the Music City Bowl was on at the same time, so I tried to keep those up. Unfortunately for our buddy Aaron, the Music City Bowl turned out to be a whole heaping pile of poo.
Maybe they needed Will Levis after all.
Yeah, and I did tune into the first half of Kansas State and Alabama because Kansas State was looking good to start the game. And then when they pulled out the recipe from the Lane Kiffin cookbook of madness and went for the onside kick to start the second half and didn't get it, I was like, it's over.
It's over.
And it was over. Bryce Young is the best player I've seen play in a bowl game this far. And he should be the number one pick in the draft. He should definitely be the number one quarterback taken in the draft.
Yeah.
He just put on a show in that second half, and they just really laid waste to Kansas State in that second half.
K-State didn't have the dogs, and like we talked about on this podcast before, like Nick Saban was looking to make an example. You get an opportunity to beat a team on a neutral field, and Nick Saban's trying to say we ain't going anywhere. So that game was over before it started. But
right.
Cotton Bowl, man. I called Tulane on this podcast multiple times, man, and I know you didn't necessarily disagree, but it was good to see the little guys get a win. Tulane's defense was legit. I mean, Caleb Williams had a phenomenal game still. Really played well, but it was good to watch a little small team like Tulane show up, beat a blue blood, and get some love for Willie Fritz and the job he's done down there.
And, man, that was the perfect way to end that weekend of college football because the two playoff games the day before were incredible. And, Tulane pulling that off is good for college football. I mean,
no doubt.
Caleb Williams, the Heisman Trophy winner, Lincoln Riley, the poster boy of coaches in the NCAA, especially outside Nick Saban. I guess the younger bunch, I guess. He's the hip, cool visionary college football coach, and to see Tulane come back, I've never seen a 15-point lead evaporate via 2 touchdowns and a safety before. And it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. Props to Willie Fritz. I'm glad he stayed because I think it's good for that Group of 5 conference. However, Tulane plays Ole Miss next year. And, so we're gonna see. I mean, they were 2-10 last year. This year they finished 10-2 or 10-3. I can't remember.
11-2.
11-2. And so, maybe they go right back. I don't know. It doesn't matter. That game was incredible, and it was one for the record books
for sure.
And then we'll go back and let's hit on the college football playoff. It started off with Michigan and TCU, and you called this one. You picked TCU. I am glad TCU won. I think that TCU was the only team, like I said, that I could cheer for out of the 4 teams that were there. However, and it seemed to be the case in both playoff games, I feel like both teams that won should have lost that game. If you replay that same script, you know, 60% of the time, 65% of the time, Michigan's beating them.
Yeah.
And I felt the same way about Ohio State and Georgia. And we'll get into that and why I think that Ohio State blew that game.
Yeah.
But TCU, props to them. I mean, they just kept scoring, kept scoring. The third quarter of that Fiesta Bowl will go down as the best quarter of playoff football in the best game of playoff college football that there is. It was absolutely electric. I looked at one point in 7 minutes, there was 51 points scored in that third quarter.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think a lot of it started when Michigan got cute. That first drive, they marched down the field, had a big run by Edwards down the 54-yard gain. They played really well, got to the 2-yard line on 4th and goal from the 2 after they had tried a couple passes trying to get it in. They didn't run the ball really at all. They tried the double reverse pass by the tight end. And I think what that said, in my opinion, to TCU is that, hey, look, like, we can't score on you with our big boys, so we're going to get cute and try and score. So then TCU marches down and scores, right? Then the next possession for Michigan, they get that pick 6 from Bud Clark. And so, like, right there, like, the game is completely changed. TCU has all the momentum and all the confidence that they can beat this Michigan team, who's a very physical, good football team. Yes. And it just escalated from there, Yeah.
That trick play. Sometimes I believe that football is not complicated.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I believe that there's schemes that work, there's schemes that don't work. Yeah. But ultimately, when you've got a team like Michigan and you're on the 2-yard line, football should not be as complicated as running the double reverse pass
to a tight end.
You don't need a Philly special every time you get in the goal line.
No.
And honestly, as many times as it's being run, and every time it's run in the same spot, it's almost like 1 out of every 5 2-point conversion attempts these days, or 2-yard line and in. Not always 2-point conversion.
They get cute. Yeah.
They run the Philly special. Every team has got it. Everybody's gonna have to scrap it.
That's it. Yeah.
As soon as you see the first receiver going in motion, after the quarterback starts, when the quarterback starts rolling out, and then here comes the receiver, everybody knows what's happening.
Yeah. And then Michigan, same thing. Next time down the field, they got the ball to the 2-yard line. And instead of going with what got him there, they handed off to a linebacker, turned running back, who's had 9 carries all year long. And what does he do? He fumbles. Now, the play before, and it's a controversial play. I understand, it's hard to tell from the replay angles where the ball was when his butt hit, because it's not where his butt is, it's where the ball is. But either way,
they missed that call.
Either way, you got to go. You got to go with your dog. You give that ball to Edwards and let him punch that thing in. But they didn't. TCU got the ball back, and it was just.
Well, and that same situation came up later in the game, and he handed the ball to the same fella, and he got in the end zone. So it was a bad exchange, and that happens. And so
you got to go with what gets you there. Give that ball to Edwards, man. Give the ball to the guy can handle it.
I agree with you. You always let your best players touch the ball the most.
That's it, man. That's it.
And so Michigan, and that's the case with Michigan. That they should have won that game, and the game got out of control. Like, they were fighting from behind early because of those 2 plays: the pick 6 and the Philly special to start the game. And so,
and then. But props to TCU. They showed up. A couple things. Dylan Horton had 4 sacks, that big defensive end. We'll get into some impact players here in a few minutes for the national championship game, but that kid had a monster game for TCU, big number 98. And then Quentin Johnson has Julio vibes, man. He's just so big. He's so physical. Huge. And then, like, he's one of those guys on that long with that 70-plus yard touchdown. Like, he doesn't look like he's running fast until he's past you.
That always reminds me of Matt Jones, the old Arkansas quarterback.
Same thing.
Because the stride is just so long, it doesn't even look like he's moving.
And that's how Julio was at Alabama. And I remember specifically there was a wide receiver screen they ran to him, and there were 4 different LSU defensive backs that took bad angles simply because Julio was moving faster than he looked like.
Right.
And he just ran by all of them. And that's exactly what Quentin Johnson did on that slant across the middle, and he just dusted the Michigan secondary. That kid definitely got Julio vibes. And had a phenomenal football game for sure.
Well, the next bowl game we've got here, the Peach Bowl. Ohio State just barely gets squeaked out by Georgia. Ohio State had a chance to win it. They were up the whole game. They put on a clinic the whole game. They didn't let that Georgia defensive line and front 7 get to C.J. Stroud at all the whole game. They more or less bullied them in the trenches on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
And shame on Ryan Day or whoever the play caller is for that last drive to not make that a better attempt for that kicker. That kicker, I feel for him because that was a 50-yard kick, and that would have been his career long. And they had opportunity after opportunity to take the yards that were given to you and move that a little closer, knowing that it's a 1-point game.
Yeah.
And so just make it easier for your kicker.
Yeah, that game came down to two things, I think. First of all, Kirby Smart with the play of the year for Georgia, calling that timeout on that fake punt. I talked about it in my Instagram video. Like, without that, Ohio State has the ball 1st and 10, cross the 50, up 11. You go score. That's an 18-point lead, and the way that game was going, that's a tough thing to overcome. Georgia made a great comeback. I don't know if they do. If they score there, it kind of puts them to bed early. And then second thing, Georgia struggled with the physicality and just bigness of Marvin Harrison Jr. If he doesn't get that concussion and they take his helmet away, again, I don't think Georgia had no answer for him in the first half. None.
It's very rarely that I believe that college football and pro football, for that matter, is okay. I'll just take it back. Any sport at all is won by players.
Yeah,
I believe that coaches put them in a position, but the best players are going to win. The most talented players are going to win. And it's very rarely that a game goes off and I think, okay, the coach won that game. He provided the most important play in that game, and that was Kirby Smart's timeout.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was a spotter, a special teams guy upstairs that got in his ear and was like, something's not right, get it. And because you're right, it was an 11-point game late in the fourth quarter. And because they got that timeout in, Ohio State punted.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm saying, that is the season-saving play for the University of Georgia, because Stetson Bennett, his stat line ended up being really good and actually better than C.J. Stroud, which, sidebar, C.J. Stroud is a dude. He's not quite the quarterback Bryce Young is, but he is on par athletically. It may have been Ohio State's offensive line, because you're right. They whipped that talented Georgia line that had been dominating everybody all year. Jalen Carter was a non-factor, but C.J. Stroud had a whale of a game. But Stetson Bennett, he had the opportunity to play well late, but you're right, man. It's all on Kirby Smart. If he doesn't call that timeout, this game's over.
Right.
Over.
So what are your thoughts on going for Monday night's game?
So I got 5 players that I'm going to be watching, and I'll go through this kind of quick, but I got 5 players, and not the obvious ones, because it's easy to pick Max Duggan. It's easy to pick Stetson Bennett. I have one obvious one. I own that. But first of all, it's that running back, Amari DiMercato from TCU. Kendre Miller is listed as questionable for the game Monday night. If he doesn't go, DiMercato is going to have to take some pressure off of Max Duggan. He averaged 8.8 yards per carry. And so it'll be interesting to see against Michigan. It'll be interesting to see if Georgia's front 7 on defense can get their act together and slow him down a little bit. Because if he can take pressure off of Max Duggan, give Max Duggan opportunities, particularly with my number 4 player, Quentin Johnson. Georgia struggled with Marvin Harrison's size, ability to get open, route running, and Quentin Johnson can be that key for TCU. And if DiMercato can take some pressure off of Max Duggan, give him opportunities for big plays down the field, I think that could be a game changer for TCU.
Yeah, DiMercato especially, because he doesn't have to do a lot. Some people may say he needs the game of his life. When it comes to an offense like TCU's, if you can just do enough on the ground to stay balanced-ish, that'll be what it takes. TCU's going to have to get the ball out quick, and DiMercato's going to have to be able to eat up some first downs.
Yeah. He's going to have to keep some pressure on Max Duggan and be able to get some first downs, move the chains, slow that offense, slow the game down a little bit for TCU in order to win. Speaking of 2 players on TCU, I got 4 TCU players because I think they're the ones that have the biggest opportunity. Bud Clark, team leader in INTs. He had 5 this year, including that pick 6 against Michigan. He's a safety, a key cog in this 3-3-5 defense. He plays well in space. He's a great pass defender. He's top 5 tackles for TCU. He's going to have a big game against Georgia. They got some receivers coming into their own, and if he can defend well, I think he can make a big impact. Number 2, Dylan Horton. I talked about him earlier. 4 sacks against Michigan. Guy has an incredible motor. He altered a ton of plays not just his 4 sacks. At 6'4", 275, if he can have a similar game against Georgia's front seven, who struggled against Ohio State, I think they can create some issues for Georgia's offense. And then lastly, like my last player, the obvious one, like, has anybody seen Jalen Carter? Because he looked winded, he looked flat-footed, and got whipped by Ohio State the entire game. And if they're going to have a chance against TCU, and I still think, we'll talk about it in a minute. I think Georgia wins, but Jalen Carter's going to have to play better.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more frustrating than a big lineman that can't get any pressure. He's not being rewarded with sacks, and so you're just putting all your effort into rushing the passer and then just running down the field to get set up again and not make any contact. Yeah. And so, I can imagine it's like the big man. I always heard the story about the Detroit Pistons. You always want to get your big man going.
Yeah.
And when they were playing the Lakers in the finals, I guess that was, I don't know, way back 06, 07.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Wow.
They were going into they could win the NBA championship against the Lakers. Mm-hmm. And every game they started it like, all right, we're going to feed Ben Wallace. He can do whatever he wants to do.
Big man.
He can throw it into the stand if you want to, but you're going to know that you're a part of this and you're going to have to stay invested and stay ready. Yeah. And on that first play, he sunk like an 18-footer, and they were like, all right, this is over. They knew it was over. Yeah. And so that's what it is. For those big guys, the guys who aren't built to just run down the field at all times, they need to feel some contact. And so if he would have gotten in the backfield and hit CJ Stroud one time, his probably whole game looks different.
Yeah, but Ohio State schemed it really well. They had a great plan for him and really neutralized him. He had one tackle. He influenced a few plays, but like every time they showed him, man, he was heaving, hands on his hips. It was warm in the dome there in Atlanta, but I think it was just because he was getting whipped. Right. A couple little quick nuggets too for you real quick. This is not the first time TCU and Georgia played. The last time was the 2016 Liberty Bowl. So there's some names here, right? So Jacob Eason was the quarterback. Who do you remember the TCU quarterback?
Well, that was after Trayvon Boykin.
I know you'll remember this name. He was a journeyman. He bounced around a few programs.
Kenny Trill.
Kenny the Trill, man. But it was Georgia came in as a 1-point favorite. Kenny the Trill, man, was like a highlight reel that year.
For like 4 games, yeah.
But he was the same. He had a great 1 or 2 games at A&M, and then that was it. And then he had a couple great games at TCU, and then that was it. But 2 names that were big in that game. I'm sure you've heard of this guy, Nick Chubb, ran for 142.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. Sony Michel, 126. It came down to towards the end, they ran a fake field goal. And Kirby Smart won his first ever bowl game as the head man for the Georgia Bulldogs. So, again, the 2016 Liberty Bowl, we're a far cry from the Liberty Bowl here coming up on Monday night. This will be a great opportunity for TCU to have an opportunity to avenge that loss with a little bit more on the at stake than the Liberty Bowl.
Yeah, I'd say that's stakes are higher than playing in the Liberty Bowl Stadium in Memphis, in the Orange Mound.
Yeah, our 2 fingers round, 3 fingers down, baby. Orange Mound for our Memphis listeners. But hey, Georgia opened as a 13-point favorite.
I told you it was going to be high.
Yeah,
they're going to make you bet TCU, and I still think I'd take Georgia. It's weird because I don't know. Maybe that's the line, because you still got that hook there with the half a point shy of 14, and so I don't know. But if
here's
it
the
was
thing:
14, I'd take TCU.
And again, everybody is Kirby Smart's one of the best motivators in college football. And then how hard is it? You've seen it many times. You get an emotional win.
Doesn't matter for this.
But it does, because you get a great emotional win. TCU beat Michigan. We've arrived. Look at us. We're in the national championship. Everybody's going to be talking about it. And then you show up and you get smacked in the mouth. And what do you do about it then? That's where it's going to come down to. What happens when adversity hits, right? They withstood Michigan, but that ain't Michigan walking through that door.
Yeah, but on the other side, Georgia's escaping with their lives,
Those teams sometimes come back and play really, really well.
I think that Georgia knows, we can't screw around.
It's on Stetson Bennett, man. Stetson Bennett had a terrible first half. He picked it up in the second half, but unless he can and did you see the videos? Kirby Smart's caught a lot of flack for this. I've kind of been back and forth. Have you seen the videos of him talking about Stetson and then after the game and then talking to Stetson after the game?
No, I haven't.
There was a video of them up on the stage, and you could just see Stetson's just looks completely dejected as him and Kirby are talking. He tries to explain some stuff, and Kirby leans over and has some pretty terse words for him and then walks off. And Stetson looks rejected. And a lot of people were giving Kirby flack for that. But so what? You had a great comeback in the semifinals. You still got one more game to play. You got to, he's coaching him up. You did not play well. All right. That's we won in spite of you. You've got to be better on Monday. And I think that's a very fair thing to say.
Stetson Bennett's getting a little bit too much flack. He's getting a lot of flack because it was a close game. They had to come back. But you know who else had a terrible first half? Bryce Young. The only difference is they came out and beat the brakes off of Kansas State in the second half of that game.
Well, they were playing Kansas State.
Well, I mean, and Alabama's not as good as Georgia. So, I mean,
I guess, that's fair. That's fair.
So, if Stetson Bennett and Georgia go out and blow the brakes off of Ohio State in the second half, nobody's saying anything different. And he had the stats to back it up. I mean, he played an amazing second half. The defense didn't stop Ohio State.
Yeah.
So
defense didn't play well at all.
Stetson Bennett's getting too much flack over that. Now, sure, if he'd have played better, maybe it'd have been a 14-point game at the half, and Georgia can lay on them like they thought they would, like I thought they would. But Stetson Bennett, he did everything he could in that second half, and without him playing as well as he did in that second half, they're at home in Athens right now.
Yeah, I agree. He had a phenomenal second half. Like I said, props to Stetson because he could have folded like a cheap suit, but he showed some resiliency in the second half and made a great comeback.
That's the reason why I like Georgia, is because they've been there in this situation. They've played that big game. If you want to blame C.J. Stroud or the play callers or Ryan Day or whatever, they folded in that last possession.
Sure.
Stetson Bennett never folded.
Nope.
He had a bad half. You're entitled to have a bad half.
Yep.
But he never folded.
No, he made up for it in the second half, showed a ton of moxie and resiliency. And like you said, that's where that experience comes in. Like teams that have been there before find ways to win.
And people have tried to hate on him ever since he got there. And rightfully so in some part. I mean, he is probably the lowest rated recruit that Georgia has signed in the Kirby Smart era.
He was a walk-on.
I mean, collectively speaking, he's a nobody on that team.
Right. Yeah.
But that guy's done it. He's got the character, he's got the moxie, and he's done it. And that's the reason why I like Georgia in this game. Is Ohio State's got the blue blood. They've got the pedigree, and they've been in these games, but Stetson Bennett has won it. And so for him to be anything other than proud to make it into the national title game, I don't want to hear anything less than that. Sure. He's gotten his, he's had his detractors through his career, and he won a title, and I don't want to hear any more detraction from it at all, because he's won the title and now he's there again. So no more of that. And not necessarily that's from you, but just in general. Like,
sure, I hear you.
Quit hating on Stetson Bennett.
Guy's a winner. He won in high school. He won a junior community college championship at Jones, home of the Bobcats, and he's won a national championship at Georgia. He's won at every level. I'm with you, man. I think TCU can keep it fairly close if they follow a similar pattern. They've got some of the dogs to do it, but I just think Georgia's depth, Georgia's moxie, Georgia's experience just really they lean on TCU in the second half. And I think the Georgia Bulldogs are the first back-to-back college football playoff era national champs that we've had.
Can you tell me who the last back-to-back national champion is?
It's Alabama. 2011, 2012.
You're right. Before that was the question. I did remember that, but the podcast I was listening to asked Florida? Who before that. Nope.
Hold on. USC?
Yep. It's USC. It's Matt Leinart.
Matt Leinart, and then
because they were going for three-peat when they went up against Vince Young in the 05.
Vince Young, yep, you're right. Yeah, so it was Alabama at 11-12, and then USC with Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, those teams.
Yep. And so you don't see this often. In the playoff era, there has been a many of opportunities for back-to-back, mainly because in 3 consecutive
had the same
championship games, you had Alabama versus Clemson.
Yeah.
They just kept going back and forth, and nobody could beat the other one twice in a row.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't see it very often, and I hope I don't see it Monday night.
Yeah. It'd be cool to see TCU win, but I just think Georgia's too much. The SEC have played for 16 out of the last 17 national championships. It's just a complete run of dominance.
16 of the last 17. So that would mean, was that Miami and Ohio State?
Mm-hmm.
That may have been 01, though. That's probably too far back.
No, that was my senior year in high school. That was 2005. That was Maurice Claret year. That was Ken Dorsey. That was 05.
Jim Tressel and all.
Yep.
I thought 05 was Texas, though.
Maybe it was no, because I remember I was in you'll appreciate this reference, and any of our Kasuth listeners, I was in Pat Coleman's senior English class when that happened. So that was maybe it was the 04 into 05. Maybe it was the end of the 04 season, January of 05.
Let's see. Well, either way, I am rooting for TCU to win this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same. I think everybody's rooting for the underdog. Georgia's definitely got the moxie to do it, but I think there'll be too much. But it sure would be fun.
That was in the 2002 season. The game was played on January 3rd, 2003.
There it was. So it was a little bit earlier.
Yeah, going on the 20th anniversary.
There you go.
So, all right. Well, let's move on. I think we both want TCU to win. We both think Georgia's going to win.
Yeah.
Would you take TCU against the spread, 13.5?
I will. I'll take them just for interest. I will. I think Georgia leans on them late. I think they keep it close, but yeah, I'll take TCU to cover.
Yeah, I will too. Just because, like I said last week, when it comes to gambling, and we can't do it here, bet the side you want to root for. I don't want to hedge any bets.
Yeah.
It's like some folks out there will bet against their team their way. Okay, well, I either win the game or I win some money.
Yeah.
No, that's coward's way out. You go all the way in or you stay out. So
right.
I would take 13.5.
Yeah.
And mainly because that's what I want to happen.
Sure. I feel that.
Let's talk about the Grizzlies for just a brief second. We've went a little longer than we thought we were going to this point. If you caught my video on Sunday, you saw that my lovely bride and I got a weekend away from the kids and went to go catch the Grizzlies and the Pelicans on New Year's Eve in the FedEx Forum.
Mm-hmm.
We got to see Grizzlies New Year's Eve bash, which happened at approximately 9:00 at night, because if anybody was planning on staying there till midnight, that means you're probably banking like a 3 or 4 overtime game. Nobody's going to plan on that. The Grizzlies handled them. It felt like that the Grizzlies played okay, and the Pelicans couldn't quite get out of their way. Mm-hmm. And I've talked about shot quality with you a lot on this podcast. It's a site that I frequent now because it's something that I think if you look at averages, and we all look at season-long stats,
sure,
we like to see how our players are doing on the season. And on these, you take these season-long stats, and then you say, well, here's the shots that you took based on your stats and how open the shot is. Should you have made it or not? And that was actually, according to shot quality, it was an upset. It said that New Orleans, based on the shots that were taken by both teams, New Orleans should have won that game. And that made a lot of sense to me looking at it, because the Grizzlies were terrible shooting the ball again from three. They were great in the paint, inside the three-point line, but they were terrible shooting outside the three-point line.
Finished 17% on the night.
And not only, so the Grizzlies won 101 to 116. The shot quality score would have had that. So if everything goes chalk and you make the shots you should make and you miss the shots you should miss, that had the score being New Orleans 123, the Grizzlies 114. a 9-point win for the Pelicans, as opposed to what actually happened was a 15-point win for the Grizzlies.
Yeah.
Had the New Orleans, if the game plays out the same, winning 69% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes to show you in that video that I recorded with my wife, we had a good time doing that. But Zion was thwarted. They showed a broad chest at him every time he thought about going downhill, and he turned the ball over 9 times as trying to be a playmaker, and it just didn't work.
Nope.
Jonas Valanciunas was terrible again. Steven Adams owns him.
He lives rent free in Jonas's head ever since that trade.
And it's not even something I'm proud about because I still love Jonas. Yeah. But man, that trade, the Grizzlies gave up Jonas and the 15 pick to get the 10 pick, which turned out to be Zaire Williams.
Yeah.
And so that trade looks great, especially if you're just comparing, player to player, only in games in which they play against each other. It's pretty irresponsible just to grade them against each other because Steven Adams is just a big lug that stops big lugs, and that's about his game,
Yeah. Speaking of Steven Adams, just not to rush you too much, but getting into that Kings game the next night, and I talked about this in our blog. Again, that's the number 2 bucksportspod.com as our blog if you want to check that out. But I talked about this and that, like signing Steven Adams has been one of the best decisions of this front office. This front office done a lot of great things, but extending Steven Adams was huge. In that Kings game, the Grizz dominated. It was another big win, 118-108, that 10-point win. The Kings kind of hung around. They had some first half leads, but that game really, Ja played great. He had that big dunk off that lob from Tyus. He played really, really well, but Steven Adams was the real reason that we played so well and won that game. He actually set a Grizzlies franchise record with 44 rebounds over a 2-game span, and is the first Grizzly in the history of the franchise to go 20-plus rebounds on back-to-back nights. He has been an absolute difference maker on this team. He finished with 11 points, 23 rebounds, which tied his career high, and he set a career high with 13 offensive rebounds. Steven Adams has been the cog that makes this team go in the paint. And when he's on and he's creating space and he's defending well, we're going to be a very tough team to beat.
So if you look at net rating, and I agree with you, Steven Adams, we could talk for hours on Steven Adams. I love him. If you look at net rating, so on our team, who do you think the leader in net rating is? Give me a quick guess. First person.
I feel like Steven Adams, since we're talking
it's not Steven Adams.
I feel like he would be a good.
Is third.
It's not. I don't think it'd be Ja. Ja's second.
No, Ja is below Steven Adams. He's fourth.
My last guess would be John Conchar, just going off the radar. They're off the farm.
At 13 plus 13.1, Jared Jackson Jr. is the net rating leader of the Grizzlies. Followed by, and this should have been easy because he is every time he is as good. He leads the net rating. Dylan Brooks plus 10.6, and I was wrong. Actually, John Conchar is next at 9.5, and then Ja at 8.8. Steven Adams is absolutely incredible. The current leader in net rating in 2-man combos, let's see, plus 22 is a Dylan Brooks John Conchar pairing. And the worst net rating on the team, and this has got to get better, minus 5.7 for Zaire Williams.
Yeah, he's not been good. Come back from that knee injury. I don't know if he doesn't trust it. His shot doesn't look good. He's not getting a ton of minutes, but yeah, he's not played great basketball.
Right. And I've got faith it'll come back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sitting here saying it's not going to come back. He's just not played well, and you never know when you're coming back from an injury. Desmond Bane, came back well and played well after a couple of games of struggling. Ja's superhuman. He heals quickly, and he bounces back, and, he may miss a couple games, and first game out he's going to score 35. But I think Zaire turns it around, but I agree he's not been playing great. Great basketball, but John Conchar even. Did you see? I put it in the blog. Did you see that Ja assist to Conchar on that layup?
Yes,
that was incredible.
And then the layup was even better.
Yeah, because he was looking at the first row when he put it up to see if they were watching.
Right. the Grizzlies just wrapped up a game against Charlotte. Up there in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, I hate it on a Wednesday night or we'd have done the podcast from the Spectrum Center.
Yeah, so a 24-point win on the road against Charlotte, who is just disgusting. They're at 10-29 on the season now. A balanced effort from the Grizzlies. I'm looking at the box score here because you got to talking about Desmond Bane. I wanted to see how he's doing tonight. Team high 23 from Ja, then 19 from Bane, 50% from the field, 33% from three. Dylan Brooks, 18 points on only 10 shots.
Wow, that's
efficient. 17 points for Jaren Jackson Jr. on 10 shots.
And then once again, I think another big thing is the net rating and that plus minus, all 5 starters with a positive net rating tonight. And this is what good teams do, right? We've talked about this. You've said this. Great teams beat the teams they're supposed to beat. And that's what we did tonight.
Right. So before the next pod on Wednesday, the Grizzlies are they've got they can really do some damage here. They go at Orlando, the Jazz at home, and then 2 back-to-back both at home against the Spurs.
Those are 4 winnable games. You have to win those games. You have to win them convincingly.
You got to beat Utah. They got you twice at their place.
Yeah.
They've been reeling lately. They're below 500 now after a hot start. Get the Utah games.
I think you got to go 3-1. The back-to-back maybe, with the Spurs playing 2 nights in a row, but the same could be said about them playing 2 nights in a row. Like 3-1 is the floor here. You have to win these 4 games.
No, you've got to win all 4. I mean, if I were a good podcast host, I'd have the records up for you. Let's see. San Antonio is 12-15 on the season, and Orlando is 13-24. So that's 3 of your 4 games. Utah is 19-21 and 3-7 in their last 10, and they've lost 5 in a row.
Yeah.
So you got to win all of them.
Yeah, you got to win those 4 because the schedule doesn't get any easier heading towards the All-Star break. So you have to win these games that you're supposed to win.
Right.
Can't have a letdown on the road at Orlando. That feels like a trap game, and you can't do that. Can't do that.
And I thought I was going to be able to crown a winner of the League of Avengers Fantasy Football League this week.
Yeah.
It was a 61.5 point lead for Rusty going into Monday Night Football. And Lump had 2 of his biggest players playing Monday night with Josh Allen and Jamar Chase, or else I would have called it already. But those players are capable for combining for 62 points.
Sure.
And so ESPN came out today and said that when they make it up, if they make it up, that they will count those points towards week 17.
Yeah.
And if not, it'll be over. So
I think that's fair. I told you last night when you texted me, like in the midst of everything, like we were talking about it, like I know fantasy football pales in comparison to the gravity situation, but I want to win it fair and square. I don't want an asterisk. I don't want to, he won.
You better believe you were getting an asterisk.
I know I was. I was going to get that on that trophy. And I've told you, man, I don't want it that way. I want to win fair and square. So, I hope that they can play that game and we can see what happens because you're right. I mean, both of those guys, it takes 31 points from both of them. And both of those guys have done that this year. And if they do it on the same night, props to Lump. He had the better team.
And that would be a heck of a football game.
Yeah.
You get 30 points from Jamar and from Josh Allen in the same game.
That game's that's going to be like 47-44 as a final. Just a phenomenal football game.
Right. So let's hit some quick topics. We've got a list of kind of alternate topics I wanted to thought we might hit if we have time. We're running a little long, and so
if you're still here, thank you for listening. We appreciate y'all slugging through it. It was great having Lauren. Phenomenal interview. Sorry to our young listeners out there, but a great interview nonetheless. And so thanks for sticking around if you're still here.
Yeah. So I do want to hit this. This is one I thought was the most interesting.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's a good topic.
Have you heard about the NCAA Transformation Committee?
I have, and the work they've been doing.
You have. And so do you kind of know – they came out with it's more or less of a proposal. Have you seen this?
Yes, I have. It's a massive proposal.
Yeah. So there was a lot of things on here that I was cool with. They talked about creating a committee for including college football or college athletes for the sport.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of compared it to like a
Mm-hmm.
NBPA,
Mm-hmm.
the NFL Players Association.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's great. What I hated though, and this goes into my rant about the expansion of playoffs and of the
I think
college
we
football
agree
playoffs.
on this.
All right, so according to this, they have proposed that for college sports that have over 200 teams, so that wouldn't include football, basically,
Right.
is what it's saying,
Mm-hmm.
that they would like to have the playoff bracket include at or more than 50% of the teams that participate in the season. So what that would change would be for the NCAA basketball be around 90 teams to make March Madness.
Yeah.
And roughly 90 teams to make the NCAA baseball tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why anybody would want that.
Yeah.
Because, like I've preached to you over and over and over, a 12-team playoff is great. It's great for TV revenue. People are going to watch it. But you're talking about making the regular season and even conference championships and conference matchups during the season pointless.
I disagree on college football, and we can get into that on another show. But I disagree.
No,
on
okay,
football,
let's take college football out of it because 12 teams is a lot different than 90.
Than
So
90, yeah, 12 teams because they pick it different because it's the 6 conference champs and then the six next best teams. So it's different.
That's not covered in this this document.
This is wild.
Okay?
This is the Wild West, man.
Right. So this is let's put college football aside. So, for instance, it's well documented. Ole Miss won a national championship in baseball. Okay.
Did they?
So they made it into the national championship as the 64th team in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So past Ole Miss, I mean, you're looking at NC State. Okay. Does anybody, NC State fans, do not look at that and say, we should have made the tournament?
Mm-hmm.
If Ole Miss and NC State would have swapped,
mm-hmm.
and Ole Miss was 65 and NC State was 64,
mm-hmm.
as an Ole Miss fan, I would have not have been like, we should have made the playoff. Because you know what I know from watching that team? We were not that good. We did not deserve to make the tournament. And we are going to reward who in Ole Miss basketball right now, who I think is 500, and they're coming off 3 losses in a row, including one to Northern Alabama.
Yeah.
That team would be a bubble team to make the NCAA basketball tournament. There is no business at all. Like, what is the point in?
Yeah, man.
So what is the bubble going to be?
Yeah.
When you go looking at March, we're going to have like 7-11 SEC or 7-10 SEC teams.
Yeah.
Who going into the last game, going into the SEC tournament, who's going to be playing a game to see if you can get to be the 92nd ranked team in the net to make the playoff.
Yeah.
Like, who cares?
And that's the thing, like to a statement that this is a suggestion. It's not officially happening. It's a recommendation, but this truly negates conference tournaments, conference games, because you can have a bad season and still get in. And Drew, like,
and those teams,
like what you said, like Ole Miss,
anything.
No, and Ole Miss may not have deserved to be in there. Like, they weren't that good of a team, but they were able to get hot and win the games they needed to win a national championship. There's no way a 92nd ranked, insert whatever team here is going to find a way to win a college basketball championship. It just doesn't happen in college basketball.
And what Ole Miss did in the college baseball tournament last year should not be held up as an example either, because that has never happened before. No. That was a true. And
as promised, something nice about Ole Miss this week, as promised. Nikhazy was incredible. Great baseball players. Like, it was a phenomenal run.
Not even play this year. He was last year's ace.
That was 2 years ago. I tried. I tried.
Get off here. But anyways, that was the Cinderella of Cinderella stories. And you cannot say that, oh, well, we're adding the opportunity for adding 30 more teams worse than Ole Miss. So
Right.
in case we have another Cinderella story.
Sure.
That's not going to happen. You can't
There's no
bank on
way.
that happening. So give me teams that are competitive. And it
Mhm.
just so happened also that Ole Miss was a highly talented team that underachieved
Sure.
throughout the year. And that's the reason why they got the nod, is because
Sure.
they had the players that underachieved. And they're like,
Sure.
well, they've got the tools to make a run more than NC.
Yeah.
Ole Miss
And
playing
then,
at their best is better
yeah.
than NC State playing at their best.
And they got hot at the right time. And that's a
Right.
huge part of it. But again, like we've said, like the 90th ranked Colorado Buffaloes are not going to get hot and win all the way through to a national championship. It just doesn't happen in college basketball. It doesn't happen in baseball outside of last year.
No, it doesn't. And you can't bank on that anywhere. So I'm all about keeping the regular season competitive.
Yeah.
And you can't, in one hand, keep the regular season competitive, and in the other hand, expand the playoff to 90 teams.
Right.
And I know that's what the NFL does. I mean, roughly 50% of the NFL teams get in. I believe it's 14 out of 32 teams now get into the playoffs. But that's professionals. Like, that's different,
Yeah. And
You
of those
can't, you
14
can't tell me
teams,
that adding in some Norfolk State as the 92nd team into the playoff adds anything to the playoff.
No, because like you said, those 14 teams, there's not a ton of parity in NFL. By going into the playoffs, you pretty well know who's going to be playing for a Super Bowl outside of a handful of years. And those top 14 teams are professional athletes that are going to give you a quality product. I don't want to see Norfolk State in Kansas. I don't want to see that.
Let's be honest about March Madness. March Madness is fun for the first 2 weekends when you get the Cinderella teams. But when you get to the end, you want your Blue Bloods playing against each other.
You want good basketball.
You get the basketball. The only exception I can think of is Butler versus Duke back when Gordon Hayward. That's the only time that I felt like that Cinderella team actually belonged. And they were more than just cute. Like that team was perfect.
Because you knew George Washington was going to lose at some point. You knew that Florida directional team was going to lose at some point. Like those teams aren't going to find a way. Gordon Hayward was better than a Butler player. And they had Brad Stevens, had the right combination. They were actually a good Cinderella team, but those don't happen.
And the biggest Cinderella in college basketball ever was UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore College. When they upset the University of Virginia, the only 16 seed to ever beat a 1 seed. And they actually ended up making it to the Sweet 16. But nobody in their right mind wanted a finals or a Final Four or an Elite Eight with Kentucky, or I don't know who was in that side of the bracket. Nobody wants to see that. I guess if they keep winning, but chances are they're going to get beat by 50 eventually.
Right, unless you're Loyola Chicago with what's her name that sits on the front row,
Sister Jean,
man. I want them to go as deep as they can every year.
and there's those mid majors too that are always good, and that was one of them. They were good legitimately, and that Porter Moser was their coach, and he is now the head coach at Oklahoma.
So
and so that that wasn't a fluke.
They were doing something right. They were a program that was developing like a Shaka Smart VCU. They were developing into a program, and then it launched him to a new job, and they're back down to where they used to be.
But all that to say,
don't do it. Don't do it.
I would rather you trim the field to 48 than increase it to 90. Because sure, that would have taken away a national championship. But again, I'm going to be honest when I say if I watched that on Memorial Day, and I expected Ole Miss to be at home, and I expected Mike Bianco to be fired. I hate watched that selection show and was shocked that they were in it. And when they were in it, I was almost pissed because I was like, we're going to win a few games enough to keep Mike Bianco, and it's going to be over, and we're going to be stuck in purgatory again.
Sure.
Jokes, the egg was on my face, and delightfully so. You made a run. The run of all runs.
Yeah.
But the point being, if you're in as a 64th team, you can't be mad if they picked someone else over you.
No.
And it just there's not good, but it doesn't add good sporting. It doesn't add good games, competitive games. It adds a lot more games, basically buy games between the top seed and the lower seed.
Yeah.
The lower seed, which just got lower.
Yep. And it's all about revenue. It's not about a product for the consumer. It's just to put products out there, and they're not going to be good quality products. And it's just,
and everything is made for TV these days. And I was curious to get Lauren's point of view, and we didn't get to it tonight, but in NCAA sponsored events, playoff events, you're talking about the most sterile environments that you've ever been a part of in your whole life.
Yeah.
And everything is made for TV. Bowl games. I've sat through many of college baseball regionals where they make you take down your own team's logos and stuff, and you only get the NCAA rhetoric pushed out on. They don't let you use walk-up music they want it to be they're playing it in your home stadium, but they want it to feel like a neutral field for some reason.
Sure.
If you want something done poorly, let the NCAA run it. And so you're not adding anything for in-person viewing. It's not fun to go to. It's not fun to watch live. And so, I mean, I guess it's good enough to watch TV, but I'm not going to watch a 1 seed versus a 22 seed.
No way. No way. I agree, man. I think it's a terrible thing. Yeah.
And I think it'll happen, but
it probably will, just because they're going to make more money. But I just don't think it'll be a win for the fans. I don't think so at all.
So, well, Rusty, this has been a supersized podcast. It's been a very fun podcast. I'd like to invite everybody again to subscribe to our social channels. Twitter, Instagram is the number 2 Buck Sports Podcast. YouTube, 2 Buck Sports Podcast, 2bucksportspodcast.com for all of our blog posts. Share it with your friends. We love to build this community. We have a good time doing this, and we're going to keep doing it. We hope to have a lot more people on for the ride.
Yeah, and big shout out to the team, Drew and I, for working through this. But I hope you enjoy our play in and play out music tonight. It's the first time we've used it. Meant to mention that earlier, but you heard it play in. You'll hear it play out on our first episode tonight. So trying to be a little bit more official and a little more professional for our audience, our growing audience here.
Yeah. And again, thank you for Lauren Massey for joining on with us. He's a good buddy of ours and a good dude. Glad to see that he got to have a good time down in Florida, despite the best efforts to ruin it by a couple of Rowdy State fans.
Yeah, but glad he could get us those reports. But again, we'll see y'all here next week. Be on the lookout on our social media. You never know when a special episode is going to pop up. But again, thanks for being here tonight, guys, and hanging with us. Enjoy your evening, and we'll see y'all next week.
Bye, guys.